Long gone are the days where we put our financial well-being into someone else's hands. Not only do most financial advisors prefer working with individuals who have already built their wealth, but sole responsibility for our financial situation lies within ourselves. Each of us must take ownership of our situation and work to make positive changes in it. This is even more important for women. Personal finance planning isn't always an easy topic to discuss, but it's a necessity. That's why I'm so excited to welcome Mabel Nunez of Girls on the Money to the show today. Mabel and I are discussing how women can start preparing for their financial future and build wealth through investing. Mabel is a first generation investor whose first introduction to the stock market was in 2004 after taking a finance class. Everything changed from there. Mabel launched Girls on the Money in 2015 to help teach women about investing. And since then, Mabel has fostered a huge community of women looking to build wealth through investing. Mabel holds a bachelor's of science in business and an MBA in finance from one of the top business schools in New York City. Welcome to the show, Mabel. I'm so happy to have you. I know we were just talking about how we've both been in business for 10 years, so we're like OGs. So this is a long time coming, but I would love if we could start our conversation with that finance class that you took way back in 2004 that totally changed everything for you. What prompted you to take that class in the first place, and why was it so impactful for you?
Yeah, so that I always say that class changed my life, just because I was introduced to something that I have never heard of before, which is the stock market and building wealth through investing. So the reason why I ended up in that class is because I was a business major and I hadn't declared a major. I was like a general business major, so I was taking marketing classes and accounting classes, and then for some reason the finance class came at the end. I don't know why that happened, and maybe because I chose my concentration later on, before I graduated. So, and that was undergrad. So, yeah, so that was my first finance class in terms of them talking about investing in the stock market, which I hadn't been introduced to before, like I said. So my professor, I still remember his name. I think I emailed him on LinkedIn like a couple of years ago and he was there. I was like, oh my God. Like I told him about my story and how he changed my life. So he was really a really fun professor and he made investing seem so easy. Like, if you have some income that you can put to work, you can become a part owner of any company, Apple, Coca-Cola, Nike, whatever you want. You can be a part owner of these massive institutions and you can grow wealth doing that. So he focused on stocks. I eventually learned about ETFs and index funds. So my first introduction to the markets was through individual stocks because of that class. But yeah, he opened that class, and that professor opened me up to a world that I had never been been aware of before. I grew up in the Bronx in New York. I'm an immigrant. I wasn't born in this country, and I had very limited resources growing up. So investing was something that nobody that I knew ever did or even talked about. So yeah, it's just so interesting how one little thing in your life can shift your trajectory in, in just like, a few months or a few minutes. It depends. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I ended up in that class and that's how it impacted me.
Wow. Well, I love the spin that he put on it, and I love the way you just explain it. Like when you invest, you're basically obtaining ownership in a company. And if we think about all of these major companies, Amazon, Google, Facebook, like all of these major companies that we know are making a lot of money, like why wouldn't we want a piece of that pie? Like that is such a great way to hook a person into investing. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. He made it, yeah, it seems like, what, like anybody, yeah, you can be a owner of Google or Amazon. Like, he mentioned really big companies. And I was like, my jaw dropped to the floor. Like, I didn't believe him. Like, I was like, I use it. And then eventually, yeah, I learned how it worked. So yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like, there's a lot of gatekeeping of information. I feel like it's changed a lot over the past decade, but before, before, people didn't talk about investing in the way you just described it, right? And so it seemed like this elusive club that, only rich, white people could be a part of. And that's not true. And so I love that he helped shift that narrative so far away. That was over 20 years ago.
Yes,
And, it's crazy because it did change the trajectory of your life and situation and for the better. So that's awesome.
yes.
I I would love to hear your thoughts on the gap in knowledge for investing for a lot of people, especially women. Like I said, over the past decade, the conversations have picked up as it relates to investing, but I still think there is a gap in knowledge. There's an intimidation factor, and I would love to hear why you think that is and how we can continue to move forward to bridge that gap.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it has to do with fear, and lack of knowledge. For as long as we've been around, and for many years, men are if you look up investing in a dictionary or whatever, a picture of a white man will probably show up like, back in the day, even though today, like you said, is changing slightly, but the men have been at the forefront of finance for as long as I've been around. So having a woman of color, or a woman period, talking about the stock market or investing or investing analysis or anything like that is kind of unheard of. And a lot of people have been drilled, you know, made to believe that you need to go to a bank, you need to go to a financial advisor to really invest the right way and to put your money, to grow any type of wealth. So there's been a lot of barriers, a lot of it that is not true, but they don't want you to know that.
Right.
So yeah, it's just women have been left out of the picture, first of all, for generations in terms of finance. I think I was reading, and this is like common knowledge, that I think up to 50 years ago we couldn't have credit cards, so we didn't have access to any finance tools. So it's kind of new that we have access to all these tools that we can pretty much do on our own. So thankfully the narratives has changed slowly, but surely. But there's a lot of work to be done still, because we still see men are still the leaders, you can say, in this industry. That hasn't changed. So
Right.
that's something that I try to change with my content and what I share, and I'm sure you do the same thing. So thankfully there's people like us and that are trying to change how things have been for so long. But that's one of the main things, kind of keeping us out of the picture and intimidated to get in there. So
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I would say, I noticed an uptick of options available to just the general population to allow them to invest. There was a point in time where maybe you didn't need an advisor, but you had to pay a fee to execute a trade, right? And so there was a lot more work involved. Whereas now, most places don't really charge you any fees, maybe managed expenses, but there's so many options where you can get involved with investing with literally just a couple taps of your phone. And I think that has helped bring more people into the industry. But I agree with you, there's still this lack of knowledge. Or we have people who are testing the waters and maybe they're doing it with an individual stock instead of an index fund, like you mentioned, and they get burned. And so they're like, nope, I'm done. But that doesn't have to be the reality.
yeah, that's one of the things that got me into what I do now. Because I've noticed that a lot of people in my community specifically do get exposed to investing eventually, or not to investing, to the stock market. But then the way they get introduced to it is through day trading, or thinking that they're gonna make money overnight, or like kind of gambling, and that really makes my blood boil, because that's not what investing is.
Right.
That feels so bad, because people have limited amount of money, first of all, and then they say, okay, I'm going to invest because I keep hearing that I should invest, and then they do it the wrong way, and then they forget about it. So that's one of the reasons why I try to do what I do. I'm only one person, and there's other people, like yourself and other people doing, trying to educate. But yeah, that really scares me when people do walk into the stock market, but then they walk through the wrong door, I guess
Yeah.
you can say it that way.
That's a great way to put it. And I think it's because, there's always that one success story, the one out of a million, the person who got in at the right time and made, so much money and now they're sharing their story, but that's not usually how it goes. That's very rare.
Yeah, it's not the norm. Absolutely no. It's like gambling. Like, we do have people that gamble and they make money, and then do have people that gamble and lose their shirt. So
You're
the
right
same
about that.
thing.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's no denying the impact that investing can have on a person's wealth over the long haul. And I think, the sooner a person can focus on improving their financial situation, the sooner they can see results. So, for anyone who's listening to this who wants to get started with investing, I would love to hear what some of the initial first steps women or anyone who's listening can take to start taking ownership of their financial future in terms of investing, but also, Mabel, if there are a few steps they need to take maybe before they start investing. What would you have to say about that?
Yeah, so I would say in specifically for investing, I would say education is key. Like you mentioned, just a couple of minutes ago, is it's very accessible in this day and age to open an account. You can be in your phone on your phone on your couch at home and open an investment account. There's no barriers. You can, if you only have $20, you can go ahead and invest, start with that. There's no cost to buying and selling a stock or a fund. But that doesn't matter if you open an account and you don't know what you're doing. Like if you're just like, okay, I have an account, I have some money, so now what? So I think a main step is to get educated. And that doesn't mean that you have to spend thousands of dollars in a class or go back to college. Like you don't need a fancy degree to invest. It could be as easy as finding some good books about investing, listening to podcasts like yours that educate about personal finance and these kinds of topics, finding people even online that you feel that you can trust and that you can learn from. Um, the internet is good and bad. Like it's amazing for what some stuff, but then also there's a lot of scammers and people that don't know what they're talking about. So you also want to be careful who you're learning from. So that's you got to kind of like observe people and kind of like really feel that you can trust them. But I think education is a key part of getting started with investing before you just jump in. And I would say some things to do before you start that journey. It's, I call them the boring stuff, but you have to do them. And I'm sure a lot of your audience has heard this before. Like I recommend getting rid of consumer debt. I don't feel the same about student loans because when I started investing, I still had student loans, and sometimes it could take you years to get rid of that. And that's years that you would lose. Time is money, especially with investing. So
Yes.
while you're still making your payments, whatever it is that you can afford, whatever, you don't have to wait till your balance is zero in your student loans to start investing. I wouldn't recommend that. But in terms of consumer debt, like credit card debt or things like that, or, if you have an auto loan, things that where the interest accumulates like wildfire, which interest doesn't ask any questions, it just rises like wildfire. So I want to kind of get rid of that, in my opinion, first. And also build a emergency fund. The purpose of an emergency fund is that, if something happens, emergencies don't come, they don't announce that they're coming, they just show up.
Right.
If you have an emergency fund, you can tap into your savings for emergencies instead of tapping into your credit cards again and then getting into more debt. So that's the purpose of that. And it doesn't have to be a lot, it depends on each person's situation, how much you should have. It could be 3 months worth of living expenses, it could be 6 months, whatever makes you feel comfortable. And then after that, start investing and start putting your money to work for you. If you want to build wealth, you have to invest. It's a non-negotiable. But there are things that I would recommend having a foundation before you start that route. And that will be, like I said, the consumer debt and the emergency fund. And and start getting educated while you're doing these things. Don't waste time. Start getting educated. Start like, you know, making a list of some investments you might want to buy or want to research further, things like that, so that when you finally open that investment account, you kind of have an idea of what you're doing, and then you can hit the ground running. So I would say those things.
You made so many good points. A few things I want to touch on. First, doing some research on investments. That's actually how I got started. I would add specific companies' stock ticker symbols to my watch list, and I would just watch and see how they performed before I invested any money. I was just watching to see, like, okay, am I looking at what I need to look at the right way to make the most of my investments? And so, I definitely agree with you there. Like people can get started without actually having to put money up just to get comfortable and familiarize themselves with what they're looking at. Um, you also said something too where people should focus on getting rid of like that high interest debt first. And then, some of the lower interest debt, like student loans, which could take a long time, don't let that derail you from investing. I just wanted to add too that a lot of times people are put into their employer's 401k plans and they're already investing in that way. A lot of times people forget about retirement plans, but that is a form of investment too. And I know Dave Ramsey is big on don't even contribute to a 401k if you have debt. I disagree, but I would love to just hear your thoughts on that as well. Like retirement, contributing to a retirement plan is a form of investing. And if people have already started there, they're already investors.
Yes, 100%. That was actually my first introduction to investing when I was 21 and I was just out of college and I got my first 9 to 5 job. That's how I started to invest. Like you said, I contributed to my 401k. I didn't know what I was doing. Like, to be honest, I was just like, what is this? My dad kind of told me, like, this is important. You're gonna retire one. Like at 21, you think you're gonna be 21 for the rest of your life.
Right.
Yeah, I wish. So you're like retirement, what's that? So at first I was just really hesitant because at my first job out of college, my salary was $37,000 and I was just like my paycheck is like the bare minimum as it is. So on top of that, I have to contribute to some random account that I don't know where my money's going. So but thankfully I didn't listen to myself. I listened to my dad. And that was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. I left that job a long time ago, and that money is still growing for me, and it has multiplied and compounded over the years. Had I not had that account, like I wouldn't have that money. So please, yeah, whoever's listening here, if you have access to a retirement plan, any type of, 403b, 401k, any type of plan that your employer offers, take advantage of that because even if you feel intimidated about investing right now, you're like, okay, I want to wait, I want to learn first. If you are doing the 401k route or the 403b or whatever, it's already a way for you to get started in the background and that money compounds. Like I'm
Yes.
speaking from experience. So please, yes, just do yourself that give for yourself and just contribute whatever you can afford. And yeah, I agree with what you said in terms of, oh, don't contribute until you pay out all your debt. No, like if it's there, it's obviously take care of your debt, but if you have that window of opportunity to start that account, please, yeah, please just start it. Like time is so powerful with investing. So the sooner you get with that, the better it will be. So
I agree. And also, too, don't think, oh, I need large amounts of money to get started. Especially with your retirement plan, it could be 1%, 2%. It will add up over time. And it's so funny, Mabel, because I have the exact same kind of story at 21, first job out of college. One of the very few things I did right with my money was contribute to the company's 401k plan. Didn't do a lot else right, but I did that right. And it does,
that's a major thing,
it
that
is.
probably makes up for all like the bad decisions we made. That makes up for it.
It does. And it shows you just the power of compounding growth and time. And it really, it's game changing. So if
Yep.
anybody here is listening, get started now, at least with your 401k plan or retirement plan.
Yep.
So, we kind of talked about this. You mentioned having an emergency fund, having, a plan for that high interest debt. Are there any other things people should have in place first before they start investing outside of contributing to a retirement plan? Anything else you can think of?
Um, I mean, well, people, bring up the topic of insurance and things like that, but that's a touchy subject because you're either going to get it from your employer or if you're a business owner, you get that independently. I think insurance is important to have because you never know what can happen. Health insurance or depending on your business, other type of insurance to protect you. But besides that, I don't want people to get overwhelmed with, oh, I need to have 10 things in place before I start investing. Like that's don't overthink it. I think if you have your emergency fund in place and you have paid off your consumer debt, and also if you started contributing to I would say add that in if before you do it independently, start contributing to your retirement accounts at work. I would say that's before anything, and that's also first. But after that, just you can get started. Like don't wait around for check off 10 things because time is gonna go by before you know it. So we were just talking about how 10 years just flew, and it's scary, but yes, that's it freaks me out. But yeah, 10 years can fly by in the blink of an eye. So, it's better that you have been investing than, waiting around to see what happens. So, yeah.
You brought up insurance, and I'd love to get your thoughts on, there are a select group of people who use life insurance as a form of building wealth long term, because certain types of life insurance policies allow you to, take cash out tax free and things like that. What do you think about that? If you have experience with it, what are your thoughts?
So this might be controversial or maybe it might not sit well with certain people, but I don't believe in those type of insurance. I feel like most of the ones I've come across have been like scamish or scams, for lack of a better word. I've had clients over the years, where we have conversations about their finances, and every time that's brought up, it's been something where they haven't been explained clearly upfront of how it works and how much they will have to pay every month to maintain this and how much they will have to pay if they try to get out. So it seems like for the most part, my experience based on what other people have expressed to me, other people that have bought into those type of insurance, is that they were tricked. And that kind of has made me look at it in with, you know, not in a good way. Because of that, I personally have never incorporated life insurance of those type of things into my investment portfolio or my finances because I've been hesitant. Maybe I don't want to put a bad word for that because there are legitimate ways that actually works for the person's favor and it's good. I'm sure there are certain type of insurance that do work well, but from my experience, I'm very hesitant to go that route just because of what I've heard. So, like I said, I'm not educated in that specific area of finances, so I wouldn't have, I don't want to misspeak for people or like if people do this for a living and they do it and they do right by others, then I respect it. But it's very tricky, and I would say I would have like if I were to ever get into that, I would have a lawyer review all that paperwork for me and tell me
Yeah.
like what exactly am I signing and what exactly is this about? Because if you're taking it, the salesperson, their purpose is to sell you this so that they could get a commission. So just remember that. It could be your friend, so maybe your friend doesn't want you to go. They might be doing good for you and they don't want you to make a bad decision, but it could be somebody that you just somebody connected you with and they don't know you, you don't know them, and you're like, okay, this sounds good, let me sign my life away, and you don't know what you're signing. So just be careful with those type of things, like just be strategic about the decision. And I just think about I've met people that pay almost $1,000 in premiums every month, and I'm like, this is crazy to me, like, and then they tell me what the benefit is at the end of that, which is just like 40 years from now, and it's like, what is the benefit? I don't I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, so it depends, I guess. It depends on the contract and what they're offering you and things like that. So
I would agree, and I think, there's a lack of education around life insurance, and to your point, trusting the salesperson to fill you in on all the details. Getting a second opinion is very smart. I like to look at life insurance as a way of providing financial means for those who depend on you if you don't have any other means, right? I personally don't see it as a form of building wealth. I see it as a form of protecting the financial interests of those who depend on me. And if I already have other assets in place or I have things in order that would help those dependents outside of life insurance, and in my mind, I don't believe it's necessary. But I agree with you. I think everybody is different. I think everybody needs to just do their due diligence, make sure it works for them, make sure they know what they're signing up for, and leverage it accordingly. And also, don't be afraid to get rid of it if you don't need it anymore.
yes, 100%. And you're right. It's very smart what you said. It's like most of the time is to protect. If you have children and or parents that depend on you, maybe that's a smart thing to do for them. But then yeah, you have to get a second opinion, go to somebody that's an independent party that doesn't know the salesperson and get, clear on what exactly you're signing up for.
Definitely. And like, again, life insurance as a wealth building tool, it's not technically building your wealth. It would be building the wealth of those who depend on you. So, is that really what your goal is when you're looking to build wealth? So, some food for thought. But I know you have a community, Girls on the Money, and it's full of women who are looking to build wealth through investing. I would love if you could share some of the biggest hurdles or challenges you see women in the community facing and any just insight into how they solve those things in case someone's listening and is struggling with the same things.
Yeah, so sometimes I guess as women, sometimes it's like limited resources to start investing, even though that shouldn't be a barrier. But sometimes people maybe are single mothers with limited income, trying to make ends meet. So sometimes that kind of scares people away from getting started, or just people that think that is it's too complicated. I need to go find a financial advisor to do this for me because I don't understand it. It's math, which is not. And like a lot of things that yeah, things like that it mostly come from lack of education in terms of how that specific skill works. So investing, I like to say, is a skill like any other, a skill like cooking or riding a bike or whatever. It's something that you have to spend time learning, so it's not something that's going to come to you in one day. So you kind of have to build that knowledge, and it builds over time. Like I've been investing since 2008, almost 17 years this year, and I'm still learning new things. Like you never stop learning about, different strategies that work better than others and things like that. So it's an ongoing process. But the more you learn, the more confident you get. And we kind of have to break away from those myths about like, if you don't have enough, if you have a limited income, you can invest or, things like that. I think a lot of it is mental, like mental mind blocks that keep people, especially women, keep us away from getting started, and also seeing the lack of representation. Even though that has changed, I think, since I started in this journey, I didn't see a lot of women or women of color talking about investing. That was like unheard of, even though like thankfully that has changed over time. But also that like, okay, I only see men in talking about stocks. Like when I started investing, every time I wanted to talk about a stock or anything else related to the stock market, it would be my male coworkers. Like my female coworkers would like change the subject or be like,
Mm.
look at me like I was crazy. Like, what are you talking about? So it's like, it was like, we're not represented. So, and like I said, that's more mental than anything. I would say I always tell people like, what is keeping you from investing? And I could probably help you get over that. I don't want to say excuse, but at the end of the day, yeah, there's always a loophole that you can get around. Like whether you think you have limited income, whether you think that you don't have the mental capacity to invest or whatever, all of that can be resolved. So there's not really any barriers.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with it being mindset and limiting beliefs, right? These are kind of thoughts that people tell themselves to keep them from getting uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to take a risk and start something new, but that's usually where the progress and the results come from. So we gotta let go of that. And I myself have heard a lack of extra funds to invest as being an issue or a hurdle for people. Um, can you share why that's not true? And can you share how even small amounts add up over time? And even if you have examples, Mabel, of like $10 a month, if that's something that's considered impactful, I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so when I started investing, right? So like you said at the beginning, you could open an investment account on your own, but a lot of the accounts required like a $10,000 minimum or $500, or it was like a range. Like some wanted 500, so wanted 10,000. Like it depended on that. And then once you open an account, you had to pay every time you bought something and you sold something. So you had to spend money left and right. Fast forward to now, 2025, and even in the past, since 2019 specifically, the barriers for investing has dropped drastically. So, like we said earlier, if you only have $20, $50 to start, you can open an account with that. There's no maintenance fees. Like, and I know there's some lingering accounts out there that do charge you like a monthly fee. If you have that, I would suggest that unless you have a lot of money in those accounts, I want you to know that you have options. 99% of the accounts don't require you to pay anything every month to maintain your account. So that should be free as well. And also every time you buy and sell a stock or an ETF, it's free. And even I know for index funds, I know we're talking about different type of investments now and we can get into it, but There was at one point recently where they would charge you a fee for index funds, some accounts, but many of them have also eliminated that. So yeah, like if you have, let's say, $50 a month, that money adds up over time. On average, since 1926, which is when they started tracking stock market performance, through recent times, the average is 10% return. So that means that in any particular year, the market can be up 30%. Like last year, it was up 20 something percent. Or it could, drop, or it can be 2%, like whatever. But on average, over time, you can expect for your money to compound by 10% per year if you're a long-term investor. I'm not talking about investing for 2 years or whatever. You want it's like long-term, like meaning 5, 10 plus years. So that money, yeah, it adds up like crazy, like you wouldn't believe. Like I have students that I've been teaching my courses in 2015 that email me and say, oh my god, like it's crazy how much my account has grown since I took the class or since I met you or whatever. And that's not just because of me, that's just how the market works. Like the market, even though short term is very unpredictable, it's crazy in the short term. The market can crash, whatever. But if you keep your money, if you're invested in good ETFs or index funds or good stocks, you can expect your money to compound drastically over the years. So any amount you can afford, start with that. And then as you get, maybe as you get a better job, or maybe you start a business and you start making more money, you can add more to your investment accounts. But having $10 only to invest is no excuse to stay out of the market. Like if that's all
Yeah.
you have, just get started, because the money grows and it's growing for you. And it grows more than in comparison to having it under your mattress or at the bank, at a brick and mortar bank doing nothing for you. So it's just you'd rather invest it. So yeah, I don't know if that answered
Oh,
part of
it definitely did. Yeah. And I mean, I love that you shared the average historical rate of return is 10%. I mean, you're not going to find that really anywhere. At least not, in the right places. High yield savings accounts, are half that, right? And even less. So there's really no excuse for someone to not start investing to get in on that action. I would also add that, you know, looking at your budget. So, a person who's considering investing should really look at their budget and see what they can afford to invest, right? Even if, to your point, it's $10, $50, whatever it is, we want to make sure that it's in line with what you have happening in your financial situation. Make sure your bills are paid, make sure you're paying, on your debts. If you spend $300 a month shopping and that's a line item in your budget, take 50 bucks from there and just get started with investing. It doesn't have to be complicated and you don't have to leverage large amounts of money to get started, but it is smart to know what you can afford to put towards it because, to your point, Mabel, this money needs to stay there for the long haul, right? Like we should not be tapping into that money. So we want to make sure we're putting away an amount we can afford, that way we're not missing it. We don't need that money for something because we failed to plan.
Yes, 100%. I love what you said about looking at your budget and seeing where you can cut back, where you spend. Maybe if you do Uber Eats every week, like maybe do it less, a couple of less times than you usually do. Like whatever, you can find ways to squeeze out some money to be working for you, if you want to one day relax and retire and do your own thing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And so you did kind of touch on ETFs and index funds and stocks or individual stocks. Can you just high level kind of break down those forms of investments?
Yeah, so first of all, that's what I invest in, what I've been investing in for as long as I've been in the markets is individual stocks. That's how I started my journey because of that class and kind of I was attracted to stocks in the first place. But now I'm thinking back, when I do teach this or I'm talking to clients, I do recommend they start with ETFs or index funds just because it's an easier way to enter the market. You're still investing in stocks, but in a way that, just to make it simple, ETFs and index funds are like a basket of different stocks. So instead of buying just one share of Apple stock or Nvidia or Amazon individually, which are also very expensive, especially in recent times, you can buy a basket of investments for a fraction of the price of an individual stock, and you still have exposure to those major businesses. And the default one, the one that I suggest starting with as a foundation is always the S&P 500. And the S&P 500 is just a fund or a basket that has the 500 largest companies in the market. And the cool thing about those type of investments, the funds version, is that they update themselves, they rebalance and update themselves.
Mhm.
So if 10 years from now, the number one company in the world is not, I don't know if it changes between Apple and Microsoft or whatever. But if it's no longer Apple, if it's something else, then the fund automatically updates itself, so you don't have to even think about it.
So your investments change with it,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. So whatever the 500 liters are 500 10 years from now, your investment is going to update. If you're invested in an S&P 500 fund, like I said, it will update itself. You don't have to do anything. And I like to, so ETFs and index funds are slightly different. I prefer ETFs. I feel that they're more like a user-friendly, more modern version of the old school mutual fund or index fund. They're like, they work just like individual stocks, meaning that you can buy them at any time of the day. Um, they just have some of them, some index funds will require you to have a minimum dollar amount to invest, like $3,000 or whatever. Meanwhile, ETFs don't have any type of requirements like that. And they're like almost identical type of investments. Yes, ETFs are easier to get into, especially if somebody that has limited funds or isn't up on a budget. So that's why I prefer that. But either way, it's fine. So that's what those funds are. Like it's you're buying a basket of multiple type of investments, but when you buy an individual stock, it's more like, you're just buying stock in one single company, like we said, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, whatever it is. And they're expensive, like I said, and that's another reason why people like stay away, like, oh, I could never afford this great company because it's so expensive. There's always a loophole, there's always a way to get in there. So don't let that discourage you at all. You can buy, I don't want to get technical, but you can buy fractional shares and things like that. So there's always a way, like a budget should never keep you away from the markets or from buying quality. And on that same token, there's a lot of people that buy like very cheap stock, like I call them penny stocks because they think that that's all they can afford. And that's another big issue. It's very risky. And typically
Yeah.
those are like more gambling based stocks versus the legitimate businesses that you should be investing in. So but there's always a way to get into that.
I think the way you described it was perfect. Like it's a basket, right? So your money is going into you investing in whatever's in that basket. So however many company stocks are in that basket, when you put your $50 in, it's being spread across all of those companies. I think another reason why that's a really good option, especially for a beginner, is because it almost it diversifies your risk, right? I mean, instead of putting $100 into Starbucks stock. If Starbucks decided to go out of business tomorrow, you just lost your $100. But if you put that $100 in an ETF and Starbucks is, let's just say it's in that fund, okay, maybe, 10 cents went down the drain, right? But the rest of your money is still safe.
Yes, that's so smart. Yeah, that's so good. That's such a good point you just made. Yeah, like if it's a basket, so the performance is gonna be based on an average of all those investments. So if one of them goes out of business or is struggling, it won't hurt as much as if you own the stock individually. So yeah, great point. That's another reason why I do suggest starting your foundation with funds before you explore individual stocks.
Definitely. And I'm curious, are there any platforms you recommend people get started with to invest in ETFs?
Yeah, so I love so there's so many in the markets now. So I love Fidelity. That's like the number one that I always suggest to people just because they have so many features that others accounts don't have, and they're, in my opinion, they're user friendly. I also like Schwab. Ally is another one that I've used. Ally was actually my first investment account ever, and they used, I'm gonna age myself. A lot of people might not know this, but it used to be called Trade King like a long time ago.
No, I did
You
not know
remember that? Okay, you don't
that.
know.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
When I first opened my account, it used to be called Trade King, and then I think Ally Bank bought them, so that's why they transformed into Ally Invest, and it was a seamless transition, so it didn't matter. So I like them too because I'm familiar with them. But if I were to be asked like now, like if I was just starting to invest today, based on what I know in terms of the features and things that you have access to, I would say either Fidelity or Schwab will be like my two go-to.
Yeah. I actually have both of those and I love them both. Yeah, it's so funny you mentioned Trade King. I remember Scott Trade was
Oh
I don't know if you
yes.
remember,
Oh
I
my
remember Scott.
God. I remember that. Oh my God. I just got goosebumps. Like it's such a long time
That
ago.
was a long time ago. I don't know what happened to them. I think maybe Schwab bought them. I have no
Yeah.
idea, but
That's
I
awesome.
remember Scott Trade.
Yes, yeah, I think they consolidated over time. So yeah, we had some choices back then, but not as much as we like. There's so many apps, there's so many stuff that every other day there's like a new app. Like, don't overcomplicate yourself. Like, just go with like people. Like Fidelity and Schwab have been around for so long, and they're well established and they're robust companies. So I would say go with one of those. Like, don't go into. I mean, whatever. Like, if people already have an app on their phone, then and you okay with it, it's fine. But just know that there's other options.
Yeah. Um, you also earlier had mentioned, while the historical rate of return is 10%, there could be some years where you're up 30, other years where maybe you're down a couple percentage points. And that leads me to a question I wanted to ask you. How often should a person look at their investments? And how could looking too much potentially do more harm than good?
Yeah. So when you first start investing, it's normal to like look at your account every 5 minutes or like every 2 seconds and to see what's going. Like, am I losing money? Am I making money? And that's gonna drive you crazy. Like, just to let you know, because the market from a day to day basis is always up and down, up and down. Like any little news that comes out is gonna affect the market for good or for worse. Like the Fed, I don't know what the Fed had an announcement today and they kept rates the same. I don't know. I haven't checked what happened to the market, but I'm sure the market reacted because of that. So any little news is going to affect the market in the short term. So I would say, realistically speaking, if you own index funds and ETFs, they're more low maintenance because you have a basket of multiple type of investments. So and like I said before, the funds update themselves over the years. So you can, as long as you have like high quality funds like the S&P 500 or all the types of similar funds, you can like look at them once a year, like whenever like you feel like it, like just, oh, let me see how much money I'm making. Like you don't, they're very low maintenance. And the idea is that you're going to own that fund for at least in the minimum 5 years, in the long term, 20 years or 30. That's the idea behind building wealth in the markets. But when you own individual stocks, they're more high maintenance. You kind of have to be more on top of what's going on with the business. And it also depends on what kind of stock you own. So if you own an individual stock from a company that's a leader in an industry, like I would say like an Apple or a Microsoft or you know, maybe even Amazon. Those companies have so much money and they're such big leaders that maybe you don't have to be checked. Maybe even if they have a rough quarter or some random news that makes the stock drop for whatever reason, it's not as drastic. Like, oh, you can be like, okay, whatever, like they'll get over it. They have the billions to recover. But if you have like startups in your portfolio or companies that are newer or like more trendy, those are, first of all, super risky, so I wouldn't recommend investing in those. But if you do have those, you want to be on top of what's going on with them. Like maybe once a quarter, every time the quarterly report comes out, which every quarter, for those that don't know, every 3 months, publicly traded companies have to tell us how they're doing, like to the public, and it's free information. Whether you own the stock or not, you have access to this data. So maybe every quarter you want to see what's going on and make sure they're on track. And also before you buy a stock, you want to know your thesis, which is why are you buying them? Like why are you
Mm,
buying this stock? So sometimes it's even smart to write it down. Like, okay, I'm buying Apple because this and that. And then if, a year or two from now, whatever, depending on the stock, or 3 months from now, or maybe 3 months is too short term, like, as over a year, let's say you see that your thesis has changed, or it could be within months. Maybe the company changed their business model out of nowhere, and you're like, okay, that doesn't match why I bought them in the first place, and it's not doing well. So things like that you have to be on the alert for. So individual stocks are more high maintenance,
mm.
if you have them in your portfolio. So you want to monitor them more often than funds. Fund is I don't want to say set it and forget it, but typically I would say it's like that.
Yeah.
So you can even every quarter, I would say, or every 6 months, see what's going on. But just know that no matter what company it is, it could be the most successful company in the planet. They got their stock price is going to fluctuate. Like I think a couple of days ago, Nvidia's stock price dropped like 17, almost 20% because of this competitor that came out of nowhere. So that's going to happen, and that doesn't mean that, oh my God, I own Nvidia and it dropped 17%, I have to sell them. Like that's a mistake. Don't do that.
Yeah.
You kind of have to access like what's going on, why did it drop, does it make any sense, is it true, like is it a valid reason, whatever. And for the most part it passes and it's back up again, so you don't want to fall into the trap of um selling low and buying high, because you're going to go broke really fast. So you kind of have to be strategic about how you are approaching the whole monitoring your stocks versus your funds.
Definitely. It's almost like if you're looking too much and you're just a naturally reactive person, you could be, doing yourself some harm by taking action when if you just waited it out, you would be fine.
Yes, and for the most part, things recover unless it's no, there's a point of no return, which can happen with some stocks. But if you're buying quality companies, for the most part, they bounce back. So you want to be careful with how you react to news and drops and things like that.
Yeah, and also too, I see a lot of articles where, if the market is correcting itself, meaning, people are selling, right? Just because that's what is happening overall doesn't mean you have to take action with that, right? Like you don't have to follow other people's lead. If
Yeah.
the goal is long term, then stay the course.
And of course, yeah, yeah. It will be very bad strategy to just follow what the market does from a day to day. Your account will go to zero, just to let you know. Like there is like
It's not worth it.
there's no way to sugarcoat it. Like if you try to follow the market and sell and buy whenever the market is down or up, you will lose your entire account. So just don't do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel like you could drive yourself crazy looking too, right?
Yes,
Like
yes,
even if you're not taking action with your investments, if you're constantly looking and every little thing triggers the market, like you could be panicking all the time. So like
yeah.
take a beat and
Yeah, and it could be days where the market is having a rough time. It could be a full year. I clearly remember, I think it was 2022. I think my portfolio was down like 30%. Like it was a bad year for the markets. And had I been the type of investor that reacts, I would have sold probably everything, and then I'll be 30% porter because I sold, it doesn't make any sense. So just know that yeah, the market can have some rough patches. It could be a couple of months, it could be 2 days, it could be a year. But at the end of the day, you are investing for multiple years. So just focus on that so that, to kind of prevent yourself from taking drastic measures that you will regret probably soon after. So
yeah, I think that's great advice. Like remembering that, 10% is the historical over almost a century. I was going to say a decade, a century, right? Of 1926. So keep that in mind. But also, too, like know your personality. If you know that you are reactive or you may, see something and panic, don't look, right? Like,
yeah.
check next year and come
Yes,
back
yeah.
to it.
100%. I always say like when the market is having a rough period, like there's no reason to log into your account unless you're planning to go shopping. Like you can go on a shopping spree, which is the best thing to do when the market drops. Unless you plan to do that, don't even log in. Like there's no point at all.
And by shopping spree, you mean going to buy these stocks that are
Yeah,
now on sale, right?
exactly. I don't
Not
mean
going
going to
to
the
the
store.
mall.
No, no, no. Yeah, going to buy like shopping spree like stocks that or funds that are now on like a deep discount. Yeah, no, not the mall, but yeah. Yeah, yeah. Don't even log in. There's no point. People get so discouraged, and then next thing you know, the market is back. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, I feel like, with the access of investing being easier now more than ever, and with people like us sharing and bridging that knowledge gap, women are definitely starting to hold more and more wealth, which is phenomenal. I would be curious to hear your thoughts on where you see the wealth of women heading into the next, 10 or 20 years, and how can women capitalize on that right now?
yeah. So yeah, great question. It's funny because I read an article in the Wall Street Journal maybe like a week or two ago that kind of spoke about this specific topic, and I forgot the title of it, but and I'll be happy to send you the link, but pretty much they talked about how women are going to be wealthier as you know as we inherit money or as we like grow in our careers or and also we live longer too or we inherit money from a spouse because we are historically we do live longer. So I see us making having more money and having and it's a two-edged sword because we have more money but then we have more money to manage and we
Mm.
have more decisions to make. So pretty much the article was talking about how this new generation of women that are getting that influx of money are choosing to kind of manage it themselves. So they're firing their financial advisors and they're kind of managing it themselves or like donating to institutions or doing different things or breaking up the money in different categories to do different things with it. So I think in the next 10, 20 years or 20, 30 years, like you said, it's important that we prepare ourselves and we remain optimistic. Like, yeah, that would be great to have more money. Yes, that we like. Hopefully, we still have our family around and stuff like that. But also, just to understand that, we can have the power to manage it in any way that we choose to do it, and education and mindset and knowing that we can do it is going to be very important. And if we need help, it's okay. Like I don't want to say on, never go to an advisor. Like, if you are at a point where you're like, you have so much wealth that you're like, oh my God. And I'm just giving you like one example, like somebody that maybe is overwhelmed and they're like, okay, what do I do? Like, it's okay to get advice or like to get guidance from an advisor or something like that. But at least for the very least, know the language that they're speaking so that you don't get tricked into investment vehicles that are not for your benefit. Is more for them to get a commission. Like you want them to have your best interest at heart. And I know there's a lot of talk about fiduciaries or people that are required by law to do the best to help, to do the best that they can to help you. But I don't know how much that's monitored, like how strict
Mm.
are we with those rules. So you want to, like, if they're telling you, okay, I'm going to put your money in this fund and that fund, you want to understand the expense ratio, like the fees. You want to understand what exactly is that fund investing in. You want to be an educated client. You don't want to be sit there like confused and be like, okay, do whatever you want because I don't know what you're talking about. You don't want to be in that position. So either you're doing this yourself or you are acquiring the knowledge so that you can ask questions and really understand where your money is being allocated. So
I think that's fantastic advice. And also too, like if a person feels the need, to have their funds with an advisor, just know it doesn't have to stay that way, right? Like if you are having someone manage everything for you, pay attention to what they're doing because there are options for you to do the exact same thing on your own, right? So some people learn by watching, doing, seeing, so if that's, that's an option. You don't have to stay locked into someone or, a platform for indefinite.
yeah, you can fire your advisor. Like, it's funny. I was just talking. Sometimes it's like a sentimental thing. Like, I was just talking to a prior student, and she said, "Yeah, I have this person that used to be my advisor, but now that I know how to do this myself, like, I kind of want to get rid of them." So now it's like, okay, now you have to have that conversation. But just know that, yeah, for the most part, most of the things in finance you can do yourself.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Don't be afraid to have hard conversations because it'll save you a lot of money.
yeah, that is very true. 100.
So, any final pieces of advice or words of wisdom for women who are looking to just take control of their financial situation?
Yeah, I would say you can do it. The fact that me or Raya has been managing our own money doesn't make us any no, there's nothing different about us other than the fact that we acquire the skill and we apply it to our lives. Like it's something that anybody can do. It's just a matter of educating yourself. For a very long time, women have been kept out of the conversation of finance and investing, and there's no reason for that any longer, especially in this day and age. So just know that you can do it. It doesn't matter how limited your budget is or how much money you have. You can get started right away. And I would say, like I said before, just get educated so that you can have the confidence to take those steps, and you don't have to like jump in without, being confused. The more you know, the better decisions you make and the more confident you will be. But just know that 9 times out of 10, or even a higher percentage of that, you can invest your own money and grow your own wealth without the need of, anybody, and without the need of a middle person, as long as you're educating yourself on how to do it.
I think that's I was going to say financial advice, but that's fantastic and fantastic financial advice. I think that's such an encouraging message. Anybody can get started. There's nothing hindering you. There are options for you to learn and bridge the knowledge gap. And Mabel, you're one of those options. Can you share a little bit about Girls on the Money and where listeners can connect with you?
Yeah, so my main account is on Instagram. So in terms of where I share my most of my content, so it's at Girls on the Money on Instagram. But I know a lot of people maybe don't like social media, so you can always email me at hello@girlsonthemoney.com, or you can check out my blog. I have a lot of blog posts and resources there. So it's girlsonthemoney.com. And I'm happy to answer any questions or connect with your audience about anything. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Fantastic. I will definitely make sure to link to all of those links in the show notes so people can connect with you. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your knowledge with us. I feel like it's such an encouraging conversation, and anyone who's listening should hopefully feel inspired to just get started, even if it's $10, it's worth it.
Yes, 100% worth. And we're speaking from experience, so please listen, get the show on the road. You won't
Yes,
regret it.
get started. Thank you so much, Mabel.
Thank you, Raya. This is so much fun.